So I did a video earlier about all the unhinged things that Donald Trump has said, and I said that he reminds me of a lot of the incoherent drunks that I used to hang out with in the bars back in the day. I almost included this clip in with the rest of those, but this one is so off the walls and out there that I felt like it deserved more attention. I felt like that we could definitely talk about this one just a little bit longer because, folks, he honestly believes that there are people out there who saw him almost get assassinated. And that moment, him dodging that bullet, is what led them to God. Yeah, he actually said this. Take a look.
Boom, turned around. If I didn't turn around, if I turned around just a little bit less or a little bit more, if I turned around more or less, it was still the end. So it's God. I know people that have become believers in God because of it, but I rarely use the chart.
So people comes up to him and tells him they didn't believe in God until they saw him almost take a bullet, and now they're believers. That's what turned them around. First of all, I don't know that people actually comes up to him and says that, because he also says that English professors think that he weaves together these brilliant points. So he's always talking about people coming up to him and telling him crap. But if someone actually did walk up to him and say, you know what, I wasn't a believer, I saw no reason to believe in God whatsoever, and then I saw you dodge a bullet and that turned me around, well, that's not the flex that he thinks it is. Because what those people are saying is they sat back on the ropes for years and they saw no reason to turn their lives around. They saw no reason to seek out God or to try to find out what was on the other side. And they lived through all the things they've lived through, and then they saw him duck and dodge a bullet. Now, the guy behind him took one and died because of it. God didn't care about that dude. He cared about one of the most unchristlike dudes. What you're saying is God looked down on this world, and out of all the death and destruction that's out there and all the pain and suffering that's out there on the world, he looked down and he said, today, there's children over here, by the way, dying in a cancer ward, but you know what? I'm just going to ignore that. And I'm going to go over here to this guy who is so unchristlike. He's nothing like my son, who I sent to die for their sins. I'm going to look down on this guy who has been found liable of sexual abuse, raped a woman, and defamed her after the fact. And I'm going to have mercy on him. I'm going to look down on this dude that has mocked women, mocked veterans, tried to overthrow an election, has said that he doesn't see any reason why that he should have forgiveness, doesn't bring me into it. Donald Trump said, I don't even bring God into that part of my life, but God spared him out of all the people he could have spared. He looked down on this world and said, yep, I'm going to spare the most unchristlike dude on the planet. That's just not the flex that you think it is. If anything, it should go the other way. If anything, if you are a true believer and you look down and you go, dang, God let that guy make it. He spared that guy. And he didn't spare anyone on 9/11. All those people had to perish. He didn't spare anyone on Hurricane Katrina. You know, all those people had to perish, all those innocent people. But he got this dude who's one of the most guilty guys walking the planet. That's who he spared. I mean, if anything, if I was a hardcore believer and I looked and saw him get spared, that would make me start questioning the man I was praying to or thought I was, wouldn't it you? It's so ridiculous that he comes up with these stories about people coming up to him and telling him these things, and how that he just uses everything to his advantage. He uses the Bible to his advantage. He uses the flag to his advantage. He uses patriotism to his advantage, and he really doesn't believe in any of it. He's the most unchristlike, un-American dude out there, the most unpatriotic guy I've ever seen, because we've never seen anyone mock veterans the way that Trump does and get away with it. We've never saw anyone, especially, I mean, a Republican. If you'd have told me years ago that one day a Republican would come along and do that, I'd say, nah, that won't happen. And I wouldn't have thought that a Democrat would have done it either, because that's just not something people do. But Trump does it, and people sits back and cheers. And to anyone out there who would look over and see this unchristlike dude, you know, escape death, and you think that was God intervening on his behalf, I wouldn't want to pray to that God personally. That's just a God that I wouldn't want anything to do with if that was me. But again, he plays to weak-minded people. He plays to people who are very fragile and weak-minded, and he preys upon those kind of people. He said it himself. He loves the poorly educated, and I truly believe that. I believe that he knows that he can tell those stories, even if they're not true. I mean, he can sit there and say, people comes up to me and tells me this stuff, and they're going to believe it. because he knows they'll believe it. He knows they'll believe anything he says. He said himself, I could shoot someone in the middle of the street and I wouldn't lose a supporter. And we saw that happen. We've literally seen that. But I just really felt like that clip deserved more attention than some of the other unhinged things that he says. I don't understand how people can look to this dude and see him as a symbol of strength. And I sure can't see how they would look to this dude and see him as a symbol of faith. Really? And God spared that guy. So God could have spared Mahatma Gandhi, but he didn't. God could have spared Martin Luther King, but he didn't. God could have spared the Kennedys, but he didn't. God could have spared his own son, but no, instead he sent him to die. It's crazy that such peaceful, loving people who really did live a clean life and did try to set an example of how we should all live, those people were taken down in their prime, and yet this guy just keeps walking around and takes credit for the whole thing and tries to act like an American hero. And we're supposed to believe that his ear just grew back. Well, Evander Holyfield still didn't. He had to have some reconstructive surgery on his. I believe you could ask Evander if it just grew back on its own, and he'd tell you, no, that don't happen. So I don't know. I can't believe that people looks to this guy and sees him as a sign of strength. I sure as hell can't understand how they could see him as a sign of faith, other than it just boils down to them being empowered by who he is. And that's what's so sad to me, that they look to this guy for guidance, and this guy empowers them to be their true self. Him, that guy. Wouldn't it be a much better world if people looked over at smart, reasonable, sensible, highly intelligent candidates and said, yeah, I want to pattern myself after that. I want to speak more eloquently. I want to think before I speak. When I do speak, I want to present facts and evidence. I don't want to come up with conspiracy theories and BS. But they latch on to that type of thinking because it's so easy, folks. The conspiracy theory mindset's one of the easiest ones to have. And that religious mindset is an easy one to have because you never have to take questions, and you can always just come up with answers on the fly, and no one can question you because you've already got your built-in scapegoats. That way of thinking is very lazy. And I really feel like that the ones that are still supporting Trump at this point in the game, they're the laziest of thinkers. They just want instant gratification. They want to feel good about themselves. They want to feel empowered. And they honestly want to believe that God looked down on the world, and out of everybody he could save, he saved Trump. It's just not the flex they think it is, folks. I'm sorry, it's not.